We have a lot to cover in today's video, including some offseason trade talk around teams like the Senators, the Wild, the Penguins, and the Montreal Canadiens. We also have some further updates on the Coyotes now, the franchise going to Utah. Plus, we have several updates around injury updates, some signings, and a lawsuit involving Charlie MacSvoy and John Carlsson of the Capitals. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a lot to cover here in today's video. Let's get started first with the news that the NHL Awards are at this point not official, but are expected to take place in Vegas around June the 27th. The NHL is still in the process of finalizing the details for that, but based on NHL insiders, that's what they're projecting. So I know yesterday we started talking about some of the awards since they're based on statistics like the Art Ross, the Rucker Richard, etc. So look for an NHL award event sometime late June before free agency gets underway. Lots of updates regarding some injuries and things going on as the playoffs begin today. Of course, the first game, the Islanders and the Hurricanes, it's ongoing right now. It's late in the third period. I believe the Hurricanes just hit the empty net as I started to talk here. So 3-1 Carolina. Looks like they're taking game one. We do get word from the Vegas Golden Knights. Shocker, I know, that Mark Stone and Alex Pietrangelo both have been cleared to be full practice participants. No word yet if they'll play in game one, but if they're allowed full contact and they're full participants in practice, at this point, I would be surprised if they were not in game one. Now, Pietrangelo hasn't been out as long. He's been out more recently due to an appendectomy. So we'll see about him. And of course, we know Stone has been dealing with a ruptured or lacerated, I believe was the term they used, spleen. So that was no timeline was ever given on that. I know based on my own personal research and looking at things and what I've seen other people talk to doctors about, it looked like it'd be a minimum of 3 months, and it's only been about 2. So I don't know. But anyway, I know lots of questions around Vegas in that sense, but they do look like they're likely going to play, but we'll find that out when the series officially gets underway. One player we know is not going to play in game one of the Boston-Toronto series is William Nylander. Now, I talked about yesterday, if he was dealing with something, why was he in game 82? Now, the information that we've learned since then is it sounds like it wasn't something he was dealing with before game 82. It looks like something happened either during or after that game. We don't really know any details on the injury. Sheldon Keefe said that basically he's on a muzzle, if you will, from GM Brad Treliving has instructed him basically not to say anything about injuries. The only thing he'll ever say is if a player is in or they're out. So that's all we know. So we don't know how serious. We don't know how long. Bobby McMahon also not playing in tonight's game. They did activate Calle Jarnkrok. I believe he's going in, if I'm not mistaken. But Nylander is not in warm-ups because warm-ups were just getting started here just before I started to record. The Avalanche, unfortunately, too, confirmed today that Jonathan Drouin, who's had a really remarkable comeback season with the Avs and his former junior teammate Nathan MacKinnon, is going to miss likely the whole first round. If they make it past first round, there's a chance he could come back and play. But he was playing in their final game of the season. The Oilers rested a bunch of people. The Avalanche did not. And it looks like it was a nothing play, but it's something that unfortunately happens sometimes. And he's going to be out for a little while. Now, of course, they start the series in Winnipeg, and Gabriel Landeskog is traveling with the team. We cannot say with any certainty at all that he's going to play. The Avalanche have been pretty mum about talking about him. When they have, Bednar said that he was still a ways away, but they're not going to. Everybody lies around the playoffs. We know that. So at the same time, Landeskog has not been spotted practicing with the team. Considering how long he's been out, I would think he would need some of that. So I'll be shocked if he plays. But, I mean, at the very least, that tells us I would think he's got to be getting close. And maybe he's there for at least for, moral support and just to kind of help rev up the team. We'll see. But Landeskog is traveling with the team, so that's a positive sign. Dallas have recalled goalie Matt Murray, of course, and Derek Pouliot, defenseman, as some extra bodies for the playoffs. Now that we're past the regular season, salary cap doesn't apply. In Chicago, we learned Tyler Johnson most likely will not return to the Blackhawks next year. He is a pending UFA, and during his end-of-season chat with the media, basically made it clear that he's enjoyed his time there. Wasn't quite what he was expecting and would like to get back to playing more meaningful hockey after spending a long time with Tampa. Of course, he had a lot of time in the playoffs and Stanley Cups, and he goes to a bottom feeder in Chicago, and they're still obviously a long ways off, so he's basically indicated he'd like to be able to sign with a team that has a better chance of going to the playoffs. The San Jose Sharks and GM Mike Greer today also confirmed 3 of their pending UFAs will not be brought back. So Mike Hoffman, Kevin LeBanc, and Alexander Barabanov. So all 3 of those guys will not return or be re-signed. We did have a couple of other prospect signings out today. The Colorado Avalanche signed prospect Sean Behrens. He gets a 3-year ELC, and the Penguins have signed Tristan Bras, a centerman, 21 years old. He was a draft pick of theirs from the 2021 draft class, taken in the second round. Both players are from the national champion University of Denver. So a lot of Denver players moving on to pro contracts. Now, as I mentioned as well, there's a lawsuit, and I seen this a couple of days ago. I just didn't have the time because it's been such a busy news cycle to really look into it. But I noticed this story a couple of days back. But Boston Bruins defenseman Charlie McAvoy and Washington Capitals defenseman John Carlsson are together suing what is a company called IF Management and its owner, Stephen Hers, for false and unauthorized use of NIL. If you're not familiar with NIL, it stands for name, image, likeness. So basically you're using their name or their images or something to do with them that's you don't have authorization for. So basically the story of this is they both have marketing people that they work with, and the marketing rep that they were both using, which was what was his name, Alexander Agan, was working for this IF management company, and he hasn't been working there since I think the late 2023, but the firm continues to use their name, image, likeness in different capacities that they're unauthorized for. So they're taking them to court. They're demanding a trial by jury, and we'll see what happens there. It doesn't look like they're an overly huge firm when you Google the company and kind of bring up their Instagram and things like that. It's kind of difficult to find. But McAvoy and Carlson are, they're going after these guys for using their name or images with unauthorized use. So we'll see how they make out on that front. As I mentioned as well, we do have some further updates from the Coyotes and the Utah, the whole relocation of the Arizona franchise. A couple more things I want to talk about when it comes to Alex Merulo. Like that press conference, as I talked about yesterday with Gary Bettman, when they were kind of felt like a funeral, if you will, of the Coyotes, even though they're basically being paused or put on hold or whatever you want to call it. But Alex Merulo said a lot of things, and I talked about some of those things yesterday. One of the things I hadn't realized, I did hear this quote, I just hadn't heard the response from the local media, but one of the things that Alex Merulo had said was that his biggest regret in the whole process was the fact that they lost the Tempe vote. If they would have won that referendum in Tempe, they would be well on their way to building an arena now, and this likely wouldn't be happening. Unfortunately, he said that he spent $7 million supporting the yes vote in Tempe and was led to believe up until the last minute that they were going to win by a landslide. And that turned out not to be the case. Not only did they not win, it was a loss, and it was not super close. So that was surprising. So local media found public records and then totally disproved that he's lying. He did not spend $7 million. The campaign for yes spent $1.1 million. So they were very quick to jump on that and make sure they were able to correct them and have the receipts to do it. It's not a wonder why a lot of these people have trust issues with this guy. He also said that he didn't like the media and didn't like the limelight. So he's never taken any time to get to know anybody there locally when it comes to the media, the fan base, or anybody business-wise. A lot of people don't like dealing with him. There's a lot of concerns that they're going to need a lot of cooperation from the city of Phoenix and some assistance from them to pull this project off if they want to have any hope of getting this arena built where he's looking to buy the land. And a lot of people are saying that they probably don't want to really work with him that closely. He's not a well-liked guy in that sense of how he does business. Business practices are not great, and I think he's burned a lot of bridges there. So at the end of the day, that's why a lot of people have skepticism. I know I've even seen people speaking out saying that they doubt that the season ticket holders are going to get their money back, because there were people who bought season tickets for next year, and they want to know what the refund process is going to be like. And his response yesterday was, we're going to look into it as soon as possible. We're not sure how we're going to handle that yet, but can I have a second to breathe, is what he said. Like, what do you mean you got to look into it and figure it out? You have people's money, you just give it back. It's not hard. And the NHL has given you $1 billion to buy the rights to all the players and hockey operations staff to send them to Utah. I think you got some money there, so you can pay up. So I'm not sure what's so hard to figure out. Now, the new owner in Utah, Ryan Smith, of course, met with players right away. A couple of things that, there was more than these items, but I know this was from Elliotte Friedman. He mentioned this in his latest 32 Thoughts blog. A couple of the items that were mentioned by players, because Ryan Smith said to them, like, don't worry, you're not going to be underfunded anymore. We're going to make sure you have everything you need and you have a good, experience and that you're well looked after. What kinds of things do you guys want or would like to see done better than what you have here? And the two things, one was a better wives' room. So obviously for their spouses and girlfriends to have a better place to go in the rink, because they all have a room where they can hang out and make pregame and stuff. They wanted a better setup that way. And they asked for better hotels on the road when they travel. So I've seen some dispute the fact that the Coyotes were using all the same hotels as other teams and the bills are paid, and that I never believed that at all. Like I've heard the story from so many different sources about the Coyotes not paying their hotel bills and that they did not stay in the nicest places sometimes. If this is coming up directly from the players, it's got to be true. So again, nice to hear. Ryan Smith, and then he took about 20 of them golfing and getting to know them, just spending time with them. Like, he's just such a breath of fresh air. It's the same thing when the Senators sale happened, when Michael Landauer took over, compared to Eugene Melnyk. It was just like night and day. Completely, like, those players went from feeling like they were deprived to like, oh, we're kind of on equal ground again. We actually have an owner that cares and will spend money on us. Whereas you didn't get that feeling before. So anyways, nice to see things progressing in that sense. And just to give you more of a sense of the dysfunctional family that Alex Merulo seems to run as his business is just crazy. I don't see him working as a long-term owner in the NHL. On the trade and rumor front, some of this is not just around trades, but around coaching and free agencies. Elliotte Friedman today talked about Minnesota in his blog today, talked about the Minnesota Wild. We know that Fleury is being brought back for 1 year. We also know that they have Jesper Wallstedt, a high draft pick who's getting closer to being ready for action in the NHL. And I know according to what Friedman wrote, it sounds like Philip Gustafsson, who they, of course, acquired from Ottawa for Cam Talbot 2 seasons back. He had a really good first year in Minnesota, then this year was not so good. And he knows he needs to be better, and he said so in his exit interviews and stuff. But apparently, Frege is saying that Gustafsson kind of wonders if they're going to trade him. Because I think he's smart enough to know the veteran Fleury's still coming back. Wallstedt's pretty well knocking on the door. Is he going to end up being the odd man out? So that's another goaltender that you could add to the mix of maybe being on the goalie carousel this summer. We'll see. No guarantees. He could stay. Maybe they decide to give Wallstedt a little bit more time. I mean, Fleury is only doing one more season. It could end up being, the year after that Wallstedt gets the full-time gig. Hard to say, but in his own thoughts, according to Friedman, he wonders if that could happen. So take a look out for him. We know he needs to bounce back. He did the same thing in Ottawa. He was inconsistent, which is why they opted to move him. They had 1 year where they thought they could rely on him. The next year, we can't rely on this guy at all. So which version of yourself are you, Philip Gustafsson? That's the question that needs to be figured out, and we will see if that's in Minnesota next year or somewhere else. Now, speaking about his old team, the Ottawa Senators, Friedman also talked about their coaching search, you could say, in his blog today. Now, a lot of people thought John Gruden, the current coach of the AHL Marlies for the Leafs affiliate, would be the next head coach. Of course, we know he has connections to the owner there, Michael Landauer and Steve Staios, in their time at the Hamilton franchise in junior. He worked for them, won for them. There's connection. But Friedman is saying at one point he thought Gruden was kind of almost a slam dunk to be the next Senators head coach. Now he doesn't think that's the case. Could be, but it's far from a given. But he does think that's possible, and I've even heard this from Bruce Garriock as well, that Gruden may not end up being the next Senators head coach, but he is expected to be hired by the organization and will be on the staff in some capacity or another. Might be an assistant coach, and if he's not the head coach, we do know Daniel Alfredsson will not be the next head coach. Steve Staios confirmed that. He said when he talked to Alfie after the season, if Alfie, essentially, if he wants to continue to be on the bench as an assistant coach, he'll be welcome to be there. But if he decides he wants to do something else within the organization, that's okay too. And Alfredsson just told him that he did really enjoy coaching. Might be interested in remaining as a coach, but he feels he would need more experience before he'd be interested in being a head coach, which makes total sense. I mean, Alfredsson was never been on an NHL bench until this season, and 1 year, not even a full year as an assistant coach. He had coached his son at the AAA level. I can't even remember what level it was. I don't know if it was Bantam or one of the lower levels anyway. So, he kind of joked that he could do the same thing, because that's what Marty St. Louis did. He didn't really work his way up through the coach ranks either. He got his gig because of the fact of his NHL playing experience, and obviously his bosses believed in him. So we'll see. I know that the Sens ownership and Steve Staios do have a lot of faith in Alfredsson, and at some point maybe it'll happen. I do think he did a great job though on the bench. He talks a lot to the players and gives them a lot of advice, so I hope that continues. Of course, we talked about the uncertainty around Jacob Chychrun, especially after his comments, but another player to watch that's coming up here as well is Matthew Joseph. Joseph was a name that we saw in the rumor mill a lot going into last year, largely because of the fact that they needed to clear space. After signing Tarasenko, they needed to clear money to sign Shane Pinto. And the amount that people thought and expected Pinto to get was pretty much similar to Joseph. That's why everybody was saying, well, just move Joseph, sign Pinto, done deal. Well, it wasn't that simple. And they didn't do it. And Joseph started off hot. It was tremendous in the first 20 to 25 games of the season. But then he became the old Matthew Joseph and became very inconsistent. The last 30 games of the year, he did almost nothing. Did he play okay defensively? Good skater. He's one of those guys, and it seemed like Ottawa's always had them. If you look before them, a guy like Ryan Dzingel, for example. Connor Brown was like that in his early days too. Great skater, could skate like the wind, no finish. I don't know how many times he does finish occasionally, but it's just there's so many times you see Joseph with chances he can't finish. But inconsistent, for sure. He can play in the top six at times, and when he does, sometimes that's how he gets a lot of his points. But he's better suited for the third line, and when everybody in Ottawa is healthy, that's where he fits. And then he doesn't seem to do well there, and the production falls off a cliff. So he's a name that's coming up again that could be moved. We know the Sens want to make some changes, and Elliot Friedman in his blog, when he was talking about all this today, he didn't mention Joseph, but he was talking about the coach and other things, and he did say that the losing in Ottawa and everything certainly tested some relationships and kind of alludes to some things going on behind the scenes that we don't know about. And I do wonder if it could have been friendships amongst players or what have you. We'll see. But I do wonder about Joseph's future there. I think he could be another name to watch. And if he's can get in the right role, he's a good player. And he seems like a good person. He's an energy guy. Good penalty kill, but just so inconsistent at 5-on-5. The Pittsburgh Penguins, there's some speculation that they're having deep regrets on the Jake Gensel trade. There is speculation, according to Elliot Friedman, that if Jake Gensel does make it to free agency, if he doesn't extend in Carolina before July 1st, that look for Pittsburgh to make an offer and see if there's any chance they have to bring him back. After falling just short of the playoffs, I think they kind of knew that, maybe one more piece there would have been enough to get him over the hump. I don't know. I mean, as much as I understood the trade when it happened, I didn't really go against it because at the time, Pittsburgh was in a different spot. They finished strong. At the same time, I think Kyle Dubas needs to be, careful would be how I'd say it, that it's not a mirage. Like, if this team was capable of doing that for 82 games, then why didn't they do it? Right? So, I mean, they traded Jake Gensel because they were having a difficult time agreeing on a contract, and Dubas, I think, was also concerned, based on reports, of giving another player who's heading into like 30 years of age a long-term deal. And it makes sense. So, as much as I do see there maybe being a fit to go back, it's like, do you really, do you want to offer him a 7-year, 8-year deal? Like, you didn't want to before. I'm not sure why you'd want to now. And he's going to have lots of options, and I'm sure Carolina's going to try hard to keep him. So we'll see. But if he makes it to free agency, I'd be curious to see if Dubas and the Penguins try to bring him back or not. And in Montreal, Josh Anderson's name is coming up. I know he's one of the ones at Locker Cleanout Day. I spoke to the media, and he's done some interviews, and he's been really hard on himself, admitting that his season was terrible. Josh Anderson, to me, is a prime candidate for a fresh start somewhere else. The only thing about that is that contract makes it awfully hard to move. He's got 3 years left at $5.5 million. He hasn't really been, like, his first year or two in Montreal were decent, but you could argue that it was an overpayment from the get-go. I liked him as a player. He's a good, hard power forward when he's on, playing his best game. But at the same time, I always called him a one-trick pony. Like, he doesn't play defense well. He's not a playmaker. He does one thing well, and that's go to the net. So at the end of the day, it's not working out. They have a few veteran contracts like this, whether it be Gallagher. And Gallagher definitely outperformed Anderson this year. Gallagher's got 3 years left too. But he's more likely to stay than Anderson would be. I know Armia hopefully played his way into an ability to be traded. He's got 1 year left. Montreal's still working their way, trying to move on from some of these deals from the tail end of the Bergevin era there that Ken Hughes inherited when he became general manager. But I don't know if it's going to be possible with trading Anderson without taking either back-to-back contract themselves or attaching a sweetener to it. They're not really in a hurry from a cap space perspective, but it's not working out for Josh Anderson in Montreal, and I think he's a prime candidate for a fresh start trade somewhere else. But like I said, not going to be easy to do. His name has been in and out of rumors linked to other players, but it's going to be hard. We'll see if Montreal can pull it off or not. That is all your news and rumors for today. Of course, like I said, today's the start of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Don't forget to join our bracket challenge group if you haven't already. I believe it's still open and you can sign up and join just for fun to see how many of us can make the best predictions for the playoff season. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.